What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us for episode 8 of the LAN Partners Podcast. My name is Connor, and with me, as always, is Dave.
Hello.
And Matt.
Yo, yo.
So we got a fun episode for you today. We're going to play some video game Would You Rather. So it's like the game, Would You Rather, like a question, like would you rather get punched in the face 5 times or have to watch No Country for Old Men? I would personally take the punched in the face 5 times because No Country for Old Men is more mentally abusing. But so we're just going to play that game, but under the video game scope. I'm talking about video games. We got a fun review where all 3 of us will be talking about Metal Gear Solid 5 today. And then our discussion is how have we changed as gamers over time, just how have we kind of evolved with how games have evolved, because we all were born in the 80s, so we've seen a lot of changes throughout our lives in gaming. So it'll be a fun talk. And we got some fun news to get to, and our list for the day is our top 3 Nintendo 64 games. We are just 3 guys who have full-time jobs, families, and other hobbies who love to game. What makes this podcast different is that we will, of course, talk about new games, but we will also talk about games that came out 2 or 3 years ago as if they were new. So you don't have to go looking through reviews from 3 years ago, looking for good games that are cheap now. We just want to share with you our experiences playing these games in case you're in the same spot as us where your gaming time is limited. If you're somebody who can relate to us, please download the podcast by Apple app, Stitcher, Google Play now, for all you Android users out there, so that's exciting. We did get on Google Play. Or going to iTunes, hit that subscribe button. That way you get our weekly episodes uploaded to you every Thursday. If you have questions, discussion topics, or list ideas, please message us on Facebook or send us an email, thelandpartners@gmail.com, or leave a comment. Like I said last week, we are now on Twitch, so we have a LAN Partner Twitch page where we've been uploading gameplay videos, so please check that out. All those links are in the description below. So let's go ahead and get it started with some video game Would You Rather. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited too. I'm going to get the ball rolling with video Would You Rather. So what we're going to do is I'll do one, and then each of them will do one. So my Would You Rather question. Would you rather, for the rest of your life, have to play video games using the Wii remote and nunchuck, using the sensor, or would you rather use the PlayStation Move glow stick for the rest of your life? You're using either the Wii remote and nunchuck or the PlayStation Move glow stick. Which one?
All right, question. Am I allowed to plug in the attachments to the Wii remote the Super Nintendo controller and stuff?
You have to play it with the sensor. Nunchuck
Pure
sensor.
motion.
Oh boy, this is a lose-lose. You picked a good one. That's a good one.
So Dave, what do you?
All right, Matt, you wanna feel this one first?
I guess I've never used the PlayStation Glow motion controller,
it's
but
probably terrible.
I know they both are terrible. I'll probably just have to say. Man, I think I'm going to say the Wii just because I've used it before and I know that there's games that I like. I don't know what games support that glow thing on PlayStation, so I'd rather play Wii.
Right, we got one for Wii,
well,
Dave.
The PlayStation one, they sold that big, weird gun mold and showed it off for Killzone or whatever. But I'm with Matt here. I'm going to go with the Wii one, and I'm going to look way too deep into this as well and say that first-party Nintendo stuff with the Wii remote is better than just Wii Sports alone is probably better than anything that the PlayStation Move or whatever they called it had to offer. So I'm gonna go Nintendo. I'm gonna go Wii.
Have fun for the rest of your life playing with Wii remote and nunchuck. Matt, hit us with your Would You Rather.
All right, mine's a little confusing, but I'll deliver it the best I can. So, it's a lifelong situation like Connor's was. So, would you rather buy a console and you keep that console for the rest of your life, but new games come out with new technology, but they are limited to the technology of that console that you bought. Okay. So you're restricted by graphics, obviously over time starting to not be good.
So Xbox One forever. Got it.
Or would you rather have the typical console cycle that we have now, but, and I'm going to change this up a little bit on the fly here, but the games cost $50 more than they would if you bought it for the console that you get to keep forever.
So new consoles paying double the money.
Yep.
I'm going to go with sticking with the buy one console for the rest of my life. I don't care about graphics too much. Look, I'm playing Kingdom Hearts and I'm having a great time.
Yeah. Connor's notorious for being a pure gameplay man.
Yeah, so I'm going with the one console, not spending a whole bunch of money. Dave, I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, you got it. New tech double price. I'm not. It just okay. Based purely on like playing Goldeneye again. Like when people came over for my bachelor party and we played video games, and we put Goldeneye and Perfect Dark and all those games in. That by itself told me that technology is going to get better and better, and the games we think are great today are just going to be the Goldeneyes of tomorrow. So yeah. I will gladly pay double to see what the gaming industry has to offer.
I'll go on the other side of that argument just to make it fun. All right. Kingdom Hearts for life. Dave, what about you?
All right. So this one has a bit of a setup here.
Uh-oh.
All right. You're locked in a room, unable to leave until you complete 100% of the content for whatever game is inside the console in front of you. You are not allowed communication with the outside world, nor can you use strategy guides. You're only allowed food, water, and restroom use alone until this game is 100% finished all the way through. Would you rather have that game be the new Assassin's Creed or the next Watch Dogs?
Both Ubisoft.
Yeah, you're really...
I had to pick games that I figured would break once or twice while you were playing and you have to start over.
Because if I assume that the game's not going to break.
You guys would just go to that one. So I was like, it's got to be an Ubi.
So I'm going to lose my progress at least twice.
Least twice, correct.
I'm going to go Watch Dogs only because it's got to be an improvement, and Assassin's Creed I just cannot do. It's got to be Watch Dogs.
I think I'm gonna agree with Connor. I think Watch Dogs is far more interesting to me, and just in terms of the setting, at least, I can't see myself horseback riding around in Egypt for.
I should have said
100 hours.
Took place in Egypt as well. I'll take mental note, include that when I answer this question to someone else. All right. Cool.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so that was our Would You Rather. We'll be playing that once a month, so I hope you enjoyed that. Let's get right to it with our reviews. Like I said, we are going to all review Metal Gear Solid 5. This has been a hot game coming out back in 2015. A lot of speculation around the game, a lot of 10s being given out. So we're going to talk about it, whether we agree with the 10s or not. So Dave, how about you? Or before we do that, real quick, I just want to go around real fast and just say what our previous history with Metal Gear is. So how many times we've beaten each game. Metal Gear 1, I've beaten it once. Dave, how many times?
Oh, my gosh. Around 8, probably.
Matt?
I'm going to say like 1.5.
Okay, yeah, I'm at 1. Metal Gear 2, I've beaten it twice. Dave?
Like 4 to 5 ballpark.
All right, Matt?
Same as Dave, probably about maybe 4.
All right, Metal Gear Solid 3, I've beaten it once. Dave?
4 to 5.
Twice.
All right, and the last one, Metal Gear Solid 4. How many times have you watched this movie? I've watched it once. Dave?
I'm a once for this one.
Yeah.
I'm a one-time deal.
No surprise there. All right, so Dave, tell us about Metal Gear Solid 5.
All right, cool. So Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, is written and directed primarily by Hideo Kojima, and it was released for Xbox One, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4, and PC. You can find it right now standalone for $20 or bundled with Metal Gear Ground Zeroes, which is what I would recommend, for $30. The game takes roughly 40 hours to complete both chapters and all the main story missions. So Metal Gear Solid 5 is a tactical espionage game that departs from the tried and true formula that longtime Metal Gear fans have grown accustomed to. It's the first Metal Gear to provide an open world to the player, making it possible to attack almost any mission from any angle. It's the first Metal Gear to feature a buddy system, the first to allow players to build their own military nation, the first Metal Gear that opts to focus more on leaving the player in control as much as possible rather than telling the story through frequent and lengthy cutscenes. Never has a Metal Gear felt this good to play, just out front there, or has given us so many options in the way that we want to play. And the game still rewards stealth and non-kill completions in such a way that they're encouraged but not forced. And you'll notice the game won't be punishing the player as much as previous Metal Gears for taking a more aggressive or creative approach to completing the missions. So there's a wealth of content that goes above and beyond previous Metal Gear games in terms of pretty much every aspect except narrative. The story of the Phantom Pain begins immediately after the events of Metal Gear Ground Zeroes. So after returning from a mission at Camp Omega to rescue Paz, who's an integral character for Metal Gear Peace Walker, the legendary soldier Big Boss finds that his home, Mother Base, is under attack. And after narrowly escaping with his life after a helicopter crash, the camera cuts to a hospital where he and others from the the helicopter crash are being treated frantically by medical staff. Big Boss descends into a coma, and when he finally wakes up, he finds out that he's been in his coma for 9 years. And after a tense opening sequence at the hospital and a few surprises, Big Boss finds himself back out in the field of active duty, accompanied by none other than a young Revolver Ocelot and his old friend Kaz Miller, again from Peace Walker. And the game follows Big Boss and company on their quest to seek revenge on those who attacked Mother Base and took everything from them. All the while, you control Big Boss, a.k.a. Venom Snake, who is also rebuilding Mother Base by recruiting soldiers from the missions he undertakes to populate his new military nation, the Diamond Dogs. Throughout the game, you'll be sent on missions to rescue prisoners, recover important supplies and information, and even do a little bit of sabotage. You'll also be able to take on side missions to gain access to more advanced weapons and equipment that could greatly benefit you in the main story but are not required, minus one or two upgrades to the Fulton recovery device that makes some of the story missions a requirement to unlock. In the interest of time, I'll wrap up this background right now so we can share our pros and cons. There's a lot of publications that do a great job talking more in depth about the different gameplay mechanics. I would say just pick it up and play it. I do want to note before we critique the game that the more knowledge you have regarding the lore of the Metal Gear universe, the more you will appreciate the story, and that the game will make sense on its own, even if you've never played a Metal Gear before. However, you're not going to truly understand the deeper meanings behind that surface story or be able to properly identify some of those major series-spanning plot ties and twists if this is your first exposure to the series. So through my conversations with other people, I know that the level of enjoyment people got from it very closely related to the amount of time they spent studying the lore and playing the other Metal Gear games.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with the amount of time before this game will pay off for the amount of time this game is. So let's jump into our pros about this game. Dave, since you summed it up for us, how about you just start us off with your pros?
Do you want to do all pros at once, or are we going to go like kind of a round robin style on this one?
I'll let you take lead on that. How about you just tell us what you liked, and then we'll just fill in the blanks.
I'll just throw them all at you then. So pros, the Fox engine. Oh my gosh. Yep. It allows for the coolest interactions between you as Big Boss and the environment and the enemy soldiers. It's a contender in my eyes for the best controls of any game ever made. Customization's incredible. You can get as deep into customizing as you want, spending hours on just Venom Snake and his loadouts or at Mother Base and the research you're doing. Or you could just hit a few buttons and allow the game to kind of customize everything for you. Story was incredibly satisfying for me. And I find that the more time that passes, the more I appreciate the game and want to replay it again. The game is packed with cool Easter eggs. Kojima's patented fourth wall breaking humor and references are also present. The game's insanely deep. I still have revelations about the game even after I finished it. Like, for example, this is the first Metal Gear in the series with the Roman numeral V to represent the numeral instead of just saying the number 5. And it makes sense once you finish on multiple levels. But the most basic connection to the V is at the beginning of the game. In the hospital scene, they refer to Venom Snake as V as his code name. So that's just like a little itty-bitty thing that it's real easy to miss. That
little tiny connections that they make.
And it's that attention to detail, which is my last pro for this game. There's millions of pros. I just narrowed it down. But attention to detail that Hideo Kojima puts in his games, no doubt games beyond Metal Gear, rest in peace, Metal Gear with Hideo Kojima at the helm. But in future games, I have no doubt that he's going to continue putting this insane amount of detail into the littlest things that just make you go, holy cow, that actually happened.
Yeah, and once we get to our dislikes, I'm going to kind of go back to some of your likes because it kind of goes on the other side of that. But some of my likes that you didn't really hit on was the open approach to each mission, like kind of scouting and planning your moves throughout the mission. And my next like on top of that is getting spotted in a mission wasn't failure. It was you got spotted, figure it out. Like, how do you get out of this situation?
Ooh, the reflex mode, I like that a lot.
How to get out of this situation. So that was a huge pro for me because I'm not a stealth guy. I played all the Metal Gears, like I said earlier, but in those games, I've always liked like bling, that exclamation mark, and then you're like, oh, I didn't fail. I just got to get out of the situation. Where some
now you got to hide for 3 minutes until
some stealth games like, oh, you've been spotted, failed all the way back to the beginning. And I really liked Metal Gear how they once you've failed a mission or got spotted, you weren't immediately failing the mission. Matt, was there anything that we didn't hit on that you really liked about this game that stood out to you?
I think you guys pretty much covered it all. Like Dave said, I enjoy and appreciate the technology of the Fox engine, the graphics. The game ran smooth as butter. The whole game never hitched up one bit for me. So the game looked incredible. The gameplay was, and I guess this is part of my. We'll get into the cons, I know, but it kept me going. The gameplay because it was so good, even though I did reach kind of a fatigue point during the game. But the gameplay was so well done that it kept me going in order to finish the game.
Yeah, so I'm going to just go right off of what you were just saying and just jump into the cons unless someone has one more pro to add in. You guys good?
I got millions, but I'm going to let it rest.
All right. So one huge con for me was at the beginning of this review, I said everyone go around and tell us how many times you've played each game, and I was on the lower end of almost every single game. I played all of them once, Metal Gear 2 twice. So coming into this game, I pretty much had no sort of background for Metal Gear besides the games that I played. The last time I played a Metal Gear was Metal Gear Solid 4, and that was in 2010. So that was something that coming into this game, it was hard for me to follow the story because, like Dave said, there were so many little hidden plot lines. And in the game, you pick up these audio tapes, so you're supposed to gather a lot of the story through these audio tapes. And for me, like, I can't play a game and listen to these audio tapes at the same time. And Matt, I know you feel the same way about that.
Yeah.
Where you just, I don't want to sit there and listen to a bunch of audio tapes, and it's not something I want to do while I'm playing a game. So that was huge for me. So what happens in the game is you get to like a point where you finish part 1, I think they call it, chapter 1. Once I got to that point, it was 30 hours for me. I called it quits. I'm like, okay, like I've had enough. Like this story is not all there for me right now. So that's kind of where I was on my dislikes, that I just didn't have enough of the lore for me to go all the way to the end to complete the 45-hour adventure. Dave, what was some things that you didn't like?
So I spent a lot of time. I really liked the game, to be honest, and I started off not really enjoying it too much because of little things. And I thought to myself, what kind of things kind of irritated me at first that made me think like, ooh, this might not be as good of a game as people have been saying. And so one of my cons is I think that a lot of the fatigue that Matt mentioned comes from there's like a little cutscene, if you've never played the game, where when you go to a mission, you're forced to sit in the helicopter. Yeah. Pequod is the name of the helicopter. You're supposed to sit in Pequod, and it shows the face of Venom Snake. And then it zooms in on his face, and then it goes through his eyes, and then you exit his first person view and he sits, and then you sit on the edge of the helicopter a little bit. And this explanation I'm giving is about the amount of time each of these things take. And this is before every mission that you sit through that. So that one of my cons was that we had to have that happen and not be able to skip it, because I think for me it wasn't a huge game breaker, but for a lot of people, things I've read online, people complained about a lot of just burn time getting from location to location in the chopper, especially from mother base to mother base, because the helicopter seems like it takes the worst route and the most lazy route to get from one platform to another. You might as well run or drive. So that's one con. Another one is that while I appreciate the audio tapes, like Connor was saying, I played them while I was updating Mother Base, and I played them while I was doing side ops, because I did enjoy doing a lot of the side ops. So to me, the tapes didn't seem like a terrible thing, and it was actually kind of cool that I got to get that story while I was still accomplishing things in the game, because I'm able to not focus super heavily on the tape itself, but some tapes were, for example, one of them is just like a comedy skit essentially between two characters and cheeseburgers. So like I listened to those tapes while I was doing side ops. The game that Kojima planned, this is the biggest con, and I know someone's going to say it if I don't. The game that Kojima planned ultimately was never actually finished. This game was actually supposed to have a third chapter, and it was supposed to be an entirely new chapter, completely within the world of the first two chapters, but just continuation of the story. Only people who bought the special edition got to see chapter 3. Chapter 2, you could tell that there were things that were missing. Without going into too much detail and ruining a lot of stuff, what you're going to find on the internet is people complaining about having to replay missions or play side ops to advance the story in chapter 2. That is a true thing. So if you're not enjoying the gameplay as much as I did, or as much as Matt was saying he did, it might be hard for you, like Connor was saying, to see missions that are not registering as story missions and feeling like you need to play them to advance the story. So although while not necessarily a con for me, I would say also newcomers, like Connor said earlier, I guess it was like a half con that he mentioned, is since he hasn't been spending a lot of time with the story of Metal Gear, he's going to look at this game, and because he's going to miss out on so many of those ties to other games, he's going to say the story's just not there. There wasn't a whole lot of narrative, which is something that I touched on when I was introducing the game. But personally, for me, I thought it was just absolutely phenomenal. I thought that they wrapped up everything I wanted wrapped up, minus why Big Boss kind of went crazy there between the end of this game and Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear game where he's the villain. I kind of would have liked to see a little bit more of him making that turn. But other than that, I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the story too much here because there's so many spoilers. Like everything I would mention is a spoiler, but it was a really great game in my opinion.
So let's go ahead and just jump into the overall. I would give this game overall coming as like you could almost call me like a newcomer, even though I'm not new to the Metal Gear series, but kind of looking at this as like I don't know much about the Metal Gear lore, so I'm not familiar with it where I could follow the story. And I'd give this game an 8. Like the gameplay alone is so much fun. And there is some story there that you could gather, even if you're not familiar with all the little plot holes like Dave was saying. So I would give this game an 8. So I'm on the lower end. Matt, what would you give this game?
I gave it an 8.5. So I think we've talked before. I'm kind of in the middle of you guys a little bit because, like Dave was saying, I did appreciate the gameplay a lot. And unlike Connor, I was able to get to the total completion of the game. So I did get through those missions that Dave was talking about that were repetitive or didn't seem like they were adding anything to the story or the main mission, but I did get through to the true ending, I guess we can call it. So I hit it 8.5 because I think I liked it just a little bit more than Connor did.
All right, and then Dave, finish this off with your overall rating.
So I'm sad you guys aren't going to be able to see the looks on these guys' faces. I'm going to shock them right here. I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10 must play. And here's the shocking part to them. While I think that Zelda Breath of the Wild might still be the most complete game all around ever made, I'm going to go out there and say not only am I giving this a 10 out of 10, but Phantom Pain is my favorite game personally that I've ever played my entire life. These guys know how ecstatic I was for Zelda, so that's pretty huge. And I would compare it to Connor and I enjoy talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Zelda is clearly the LeBron James of games right now in my eyes. Total all-around package, does everything. But Connor, who do we love most?
Kyrie Irving.
We love Kyrie. So
Kyrie.
Metal Gear is my Kyrie. I recognize that there may be games out there that are just more complete and objectively better. I'm going to say Metal Gear, pick it up, play it now because it's the best game. My favorite game ever made. So.
All right, yeah. So Metal Gear, I mean, we could talk for days about Metal Gear Solid 5. Dave has a lot of opinions about Metal Gear Solid 5. He loves the game. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our discussion topic for today, which is how have we changed over time with games? You know, how have we evolved? So I'm just going to tell you a quick story about a big moment in my life as a gamer. Probably my best day ever as a gamer. Matt, you've probably heard this story before, but yeah. It starts off in Christmas of 2001, where I received my first PlayStation 2. With that PlayStation 2, I got Red Faction, Soldier of Fortune, NFL Quarterback Club 2002, and Metal Gear Solid 2. That was not my best game in gaming. The day was my best day of gaming ever was Super Bowl 2002, Patriots and Rams. The reason I remember this so clearly is because that day I finished Metal Gear Solid 2. I beat Metal Gear Solid 2 on that day of the Super Bowl. And then, right after I finished it, my mom called me and she was at the mall. She's like, hey, there's this game called Grand Theft Auto 3. Do you want me to pick it up? I'm like, yes, please pick me up that game. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew there was something about this game that's got people talking right now. So my mom got it for me. My life was changed forever after playing Grand Theft Auto 3. So that was that was a big, decisive moment in my life when gaming really became something for me. Going from playing Metal Gear Solid 2, then immediately jumping to Grand Theft Auto 3, those are both top 10 games of my life. My favorite games that I've ever played. Both of those games all just coming at me within one day. And, throughout time, I've seen myself really start to change. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But, Matt, what was a big moment for you when you kind of started looking at games a little bit differently?
So I'm going to talk about just briefly 2 moments that I had. So the first moment I had, so I mean, my gaming goes back as far as, for me, original NES, playing Mario, Duck Hunt, that whole thing. But my first real moment of really enjoying and understanding gaming was Ocarina of Time on the N64. I remember going with my mom to Walmart, which back where I grew up, that it turned into a super Walmart now. It's not even the same Walmart anymore. But I remember buying that with birthday money. Didn't even really know much about the game. And I think that's what was cool about gaming back then is you kind of just pick things based off of how the box looked or, just something that looked interesting to you. So I picked that up, played it with my brother and his friend, and just fell in love with the game. It's my favorite game of all time to this day. So I think that was a big moment for me. And then the second moment, Connor, you'll relate to this one, was I had my PS2 Slim, and a little game in the fall came out known as Bully. And
that was a big moment too in all of our lives.
It was a huge moment. I remember going home and that's one of the only gaming sessions I can remember where I think I played for about 6 or 7 hours straight, just not even a break to eat or anything. I just played.
I don't think you blinked.
No, it was insane. I fell so much in love with that game, and me and Connor obviously have a special place in our heart for that one, but that was another huge moment for me.
Dave, what's a big moment for you that you remember when you looked at games differently?
For me, I've kind of been just grown up my entire life connected with gaming. I don't remember life before Atari, really, and so that's my first memory is playing Blueprint on Atari and realizing as a very young child that I was able to control TV. And I know I'm not super older than other gentlemen here in this chat, but I feel like after hearing them talk about their big moments, I'm old enough to really, I was old enough as a young kid to just appreciate holy cow, I'm actually doing this. And then of course, my friends and I spent hours and hours and hours sleepovers up all night trying to figure out how to beat The Legend of Zelda, which I eventually beat as a grown man. But original NES Legend of Zelda, the original Dark Souls, I spent many hours failing.
Got your revenge.
Yeah, and I think, my big moment was that day finishing Metal Gear Solid 2 and GTA 3, but the first video game I ever played was Super Mario Kart on the Super NES. I remember sitting in my room playing with my brother Chase, playing Super Mario Kart, and then, just becoming my Nintendo 64 becoming part of my life, basically, another part of the family, just all day, every day, just Nintendo 64. Yep. But I think that moment where I played GTA 3, that changed the scope of things for me. And as we finish up our discussion here, let's just talk a little bit about how maybe we've evolved over time with the games. For example, with me, like I said, PlayStation 2 was a big one for me, and I didn't really fall off, but 360 and PS3, that generation didn't really click with me very much. I don't know, maybe it's just the time of my life, high school, college, where it didn't have the time to be committing to games as much. And I played my fair amount of games then, but I feel like the PS4 generation has really sent me back to my Nintendo 64, PlayStation 2 days where every single game's looking interesting to me. Every single game is something I want to play. So I've kind of evolved throughout the times where back in high school and college I would play only a couple games a year. That game's not for me. I'm not going to try it. But now it's like, yeah, I'll try it, and yeah, I'll play all the Kingdom Hearts games. Yeah, no problem. And I think that's a big change for me. What about Dave? What about you? How have you evolved?
It's been really strange, and with time, I'm going to use, because this is a video game discussion on a video game podcast here, I'm going to use Metal Gear Solid 3 to demonstrate my point. In Metal Gear Solid 3, one of the ongoing themes of that game is that an enemy is never a lifetime enemy and a friend is never a lifetime friend, because on the battlefield, as times change, your relationship with the people who are close to you and with the things around you change. And so I think that what has changed gaming mostly for me is that whole going from, in high school, I was playing video games all the time, playing multiplayer games, wanting to be the best at every multiplayer game, hyper competitive, even scared a couple of my friends away at the time with my competitive nature at games like Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike Source, StarCraft, Brood War, things like that. And now being a father and being a husband and not really having the time to commit like I used to becoming the best at multiplayer games, I find that now story-based games and games that I can like pause or play in small intervals and pick up again, anything really story-based has me pretty interested right now, which is a big change from a very large part of my life.
You've put in well over 1,000 hours into Dota.
Dota 2. That was the last, actually. That was the last multiplayer game that I was serious about being awesome at, and ironically, I was not awesome in the end.
Yeah, I'm sure you're pretty good, Matt. How have you evolved over time?
So I think my whole life I've had a similar theme throughout my life, whereas I was kind of the opposite of Dave. I've always been super into single player games and story and, RPGs where you can really put yourself into the character and the world and just really being involved. Like I said, I loved Zelda. I loved Final Fantasy, those types of games. I got into a little bit of multiplayer, with like Call of Duty and stuff like that, but in Gears of War, but that was more casual for me because it was just go on and play with some friends, have some fun. But I think where I've evolved is now that I've been a gamer for a while now, I think I have a greater sense of what I like, and I know what I like, and I think I have less tolerance for certain things. Me and Connor were just chatting last night on PS4. I was playing Yakuza, and I was complaining about like getting stuck in this side quest because it had nothing to do with the main story. It had nothing to do with the game. It wasn't rewarding at all. So I have less tolerance for certain things, and I know what I like. So, and I also used to be really obsessed with like cutscenes. I used to think they were amazing, and I used to always look forward to them in games because it would always kind of showcase the power of that game or the system and the graphics and things like that. But now as I'm getting older, I find myself getting less interested in cutscenes where I want to get back to the gameplay a lot faster. So I noticed I've changed a lot in that way. But yeah, pretty much throughout my whole life, I've always been just really into story-based single-player games.
Yeah, and I think, all of us, obviously, like I said before, going through Super Nintendo, Sega, 64, PlayStation 1, 2, all the systems, we've seen a lot of changes, and it's exciting stuff. So we're going to go ahead and just talk about two news stories real fast. A big one that developed, I think, earlier this week was the Super Nintendo Classic getting announced. So that is happening. That's coming out September 29th. I'm excited. Matt's excited. There's 21 games on the lineup. I got to look at the lineup, and I'm a little disappointed, though. I'm pretty sure I own about 66% of those games, like 2/3 of those games. So I'm still going to buy it because it's awesome. Yeah. But I don't know how much gameplay I'm going to get out of it because I really feel like just busting out my Super Nintendo right now and playing those games. But I know Matt's going to get it.
Yeah. I'm disappointed no Chrono Trigger. That was my big one I was looking forward to.
Maybe that'll be a sleeper. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us with that one. I know Dave, you don't even have to say anything. I know you were going to be lining up, Dave, right at midnight, standing outside, getting one. Right, Dave?
I disapprove of this entire thing. Hey, but I would like to point out that I did snag Connor's NES classic. Just walking into a GameStop, just lucky the Irish one day. So if I do see the SNES classic, you have my word in front of our multiple followers, I will pick it up for you.
All right, sounds good. And our last news story, I just want a quick answer from Dave on this one. The Sega Flashback console with 85 games was announced to come out in September. Dave, do you own this?
I already own this thing.
That's
man.
what I thought. That's what I'm saying.
Oh man, they're riding the coattails of the popularity of the NES Classic. It's shameful. And what I have is actually better because their new Sega. I haven't read about it, but I'm assuming it's not going to be something where you can put actual Sega games.
I think it is. I think it's the same thing, but all it is just now it's HD compatible. So that's their big.
Yeah.
I think that's the only difference is now it's HD compatible, and people are so fooled where they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go get the Sega Flashback. That's awesome." It's like it's sitting at Bed Bath & Beyond right now, sitting on end caps. Like, just go grab one.
And on my shelf, because actually what happened was my Sega Genesis stopped working, and my wife and I had old Sega games that we took from our parents' house, and we're like, "Oh man, I wish we could play some of these games." And what made me want to buy the Sega is it's an actual Sega Genesis. It just happens to have games programmed into it. Like I can take my cartridges, put it in the Sega Genesis, and it will play my games. You cannot do that with the NES Classic or SNES Classic, by the way.
Good for Sega. They're tricking the consumer. Good for them.
For Sega.
Good for them.
They're sneaky, man.
Let's go ahead and close out episode 8 of the LAN Partners Podcast with our top 3 Nintendo 64 games. Dave, get the ball rolling. What is your number 3 favorite 64 game?
Number 3 favorite N64 game is Star Fox 64. Countless hours on the multiplayer. I've defeated Andros more times than will fit on my appendages. So,
all right, I'll go. My number 3 is Perfect Dark. I think that game was a ton of fun. I remember spending so many nights just playing against. I think that was like one of the first games to incorporate having bots to face, like the meat. Bot where he just goes around with those like cleavers and stuff, and like Judge Sim where if you kill him first he'll come back and kill you like the whole rest of the game, something like that. But that game was a ton of
Sentry Turret.
That
the laptop gun.
Game was a ton of fun. Matt, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is actually Mario Party 2. I spent a whole ton of time. I have 3 brothers, and we spent insurmountable amount of time playing Mario Party 2.
Yeah, that Mario Party is a great gem, either one of them. Dave, what was your number 2 64 game?
All right, my number 2 is Matt's number 1, and I'm just going to go ahead and guess it. Zelda Ocarina of Time. Yeah. My number 2 is his number 1. Boo, Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Boo. My number 2 is Star Fox 64. That game is one of those games where you could sit down and you'll beat it in one session just because it's such a short game. And
like 45 minutes.
and it's just so much fun. It's so great. Matt, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is the original Paper Mario. That game, it's a long game, and I've beaten it, I think, 3 times now. So I loved that game.
It's a good game.
And finish this off. Dave, what's your number 1? I have a feeling your number 1's going to be my number 1.
I think it is. Connor's number 1 is Super Mario 64, and I don't know how you can pick a game besides this. And if it's not Super Mario 64, if it's not on either one of your lists, I'm removing your N64 privileges because Super Mario 64 revolutionized the way that platformers were played, and my sister and I played it endlessly.
That's definitely not my number 1.
Valid point.
My number 1 is Rainbow Six. This game. This game was life-changing for me. Rainbow Six was my favorite. The day I got it for Christmas, my neighbor Kevin, my good friend Kevin, we played through pretty much the whole game in one night. Like it's just, I still go back and play that game.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's great.
That game was tough, right? That game was tough.
Well, you could set the computers and they do all the work for you, and then you just kind of sweep in, and it's awesome.
Walk in.
Clean up crew.
That's all I do.
Don't worry, guys. I got this.
Matt, what's your number 1?
As no surprise, I even
alluded
to it earlier. Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I have beaten this game more than any other game that I've ever played in my life. I have it on like every available system that it's on, like Virtual Console on my 3DS, all that stuff. So huge nostalgia factor, obviously, but it still holds up to me as a great game even today. So that says a lot.
Debatable. And I'm just joking. That game is great. So that was episode 8 of the LAN Partners Podcast. I hope you had fun. We will. Also, again, if you want to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, you could get all our notifications about our Twitch feed and check out all our videos. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you think. Give us some ideas.
Some would you rathers.
Yeah, leave us some would you rather ideas. That'd be a lot of fun. List ideas, anything. Thanks again for listening. Sorry about the connection. I think there was a little bit connection problems. I heard some feedback during the show here, so hopefully you wasn't too bad on the listener end. So sorry for that. Thanks for listening. See you next week.